Welcome to a new video and welcome to, I guess, my first reading vlog, or my version of a little reading vlog. What I thought I would do this year is share my thoughts on the non-fiction books that I read. So I have got a little goal of reading one non-fiction a month, and January's is Bittersweet by Susan Cain. Now I actually started reading this book last year and annotating it. So I've just gone through and marked some passages that I thought I would share with you. It's a little bit hard because, you know, when I'm going through stuff, to get context and to keep things nice and short, but I just thought I would share some bits and pieces from what I've already read, and then as I finish and as I'm reading, I will just film some little clips and put them all together in one video. So I hope that sounds good. So what I thought I'd do first is just read the back of Bittersweet, just so you have a little idea of what it's about and if it does actually interest you. So it says, bittersweetness is a tendency towards states of longing, poignancy and sorrow, an acute awareness of passing time and a curiously piercing joy at the beauty of the world. It recognises that light and dark, birth and death, bitter and sweet are forever paired. In Bittersweet, Susan Cain employs the same mix of research, storytelling and memoir as she did in Quiet, which is a book about introverts. This time to explore how embracing the bittersweetness at the heart of life is the true path to creativity and connection. Cain shows movingly how a bittersweet state of mind, though we've been blind to its value, is the quiet force that helps us transcend our personal and collective pain. It can change the way we live, the way we work, and the way we love. If we realise that all humans know or will know loss and suffering, we can turn towards one another. At a time of profound discord and personal anxiety, Bittersweet brings us together in deep and unexpected ways. So yeah, just a beautiful topic, I thought. So what I'm going to do is just flip to these pages and share some bits and pieces. So what should I share with you first? I've just kind of marked some paragraphs. So this little bit, she says, I've concluded that bittersweetness is not, as we tend to think, just a momentary feeling or event. It's also a quiet force, a way of being, a storied tradition as dramatically overlooked as it is brimming with human potential. It's an authentic and elevating response to the problem of being alive in a deeply flawed yet stubbornly beautiful world. Yeah. Okay, so, and then she says, Bittersweet shows us how to respond to pain by acknowledging it and attempting to turn it into art, the way musicians do, or healing or innovation or anything else that nourishes the soul. If we don't transform our sorrows and longings, we can end up inflicting them on others via abuse, domination, neglect. But if we realise that all humans know or will know loss and suffering, we can turn toward each other. So that's what she was talking about on the back there. So yeah, I just love the notion or the theory or whatever you like to call it, that, you know, we all experience sadness and sorrow and we can transform that into things that nourish us and nourish the people around us, the people we live with, work with. Yeah, that is beautiful. And she does have a bittersweet quiz, which just asks some questions. And if you kind of say yes to any of these questions, then I guess she's saying you have a tendency towards that bittersweetness of life. And that is not meaning that we focus on the sadness or sorrow, but I guess it's just like we feel it deeply and we are able to use it to help people and help ourselves and help the world. I won't read all of those questions, but if you are interested, it is really a nice thing to go through. And then what is next? So next she talks about something called the compassionate instinct, which is the idea that we humans are wired to respond to each other's troubles with care. And she says the word compassion literally means to suffer together. So that, yeah, I guess that again comes back to this like turning toward each other and helping each other. Yeah, as I said, it's kind of hard to pick out just bits without reading a whole chapter or a whole couple of pages. So yeah, I hope these snippets just give you a little bit of an insight to this book. So she says, our impulse to respond to other beings' sadness sits in the same location as our need to breathe, digest food, reproduce and protect our babies, in the same place as our desire to be rewarded and to enjoy life's pleasures. Caring is right at the heart of human existence. Sadness is about caring, and the mother of sadness is compassion. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. It's hard to, like when I do the rest of these clips, I'll be kind of sharing them with you in real time as I'm reading them. So that's probably going to be a little bit easier for me to expand on. But yeah, I just wanted to share these little bits as well. She goes on to say, if we could honour sadness a little more, maybe we could see it rather than enforce smiles and righteous outrage as the bridge we need to connect with each other. Lovely. I've got so much more kind of marked out, but yeah, I just want to not, drag these videos on too much, but just share some highlights. So, what should I share next? She talks about longing. She says, our longing shows up in a myriad of ways, including the way that I've been wondering about all my life, the riddle of why so many of us love sad music. Yeah, I guess that's just our awareness of the bittersweetness of life when we are drawn to things like that. I guess because we can relate on some level. And then she says, the paradoxical and mysterious mix of intense joy and sadness, such things have made the lives of generations of people worthwhile. So yeah, you can just have this beautiful piece of music, but it's almost like it's just so beautiful that it is, I guess, sad, but moving is the word that comes to me. It's like when you're in this, in a beautiful place in nature and it's just so beautiful that it just really moves you to tears, or yeah, to really feel something in your heart. Yeah, it just says, it turns out lots of people feel this way. People whose favourite songs are happy listen to them about 175 times on average, but those who favour bittersweet songs listen almost 800 times. So yeah, I guess some of us definitely have a tendency to that, and that research is really, really interesting. I guess sometimes we do need to turn towards that sadness to be able to transform it, to be able to feel it, and yeah. So next thing, she's still talking about music here, and she says, yearning melodies help our bodies to achieve homeostasis, a state in which our emotional and physical bodies function within optimal range. And then she says, the moonlight sonatas of the world don't simply discharge our emotions, they elevate them. Studies even show that babies in intensive care units who listen to lullabies have stronger breathing, feeding patterns and heart rates than infants hearing other kinds of music. Wow. Music is something that I have put on my list this year to listen to more music, because I find that it just does uplift me, and I don't listen to enough music, and I love music. I was actually listening to some music in the car today, and it was just really nice. And then she's talking here about creativity. So she says, it may be more useful to view creativity through the lens of bittersweetness, of grappling simultaneously with darkness and light. It's not that the pain equals art, it's that creativity has the power to look pain in the eye and to decide to turn it into something better. In the end, it is really about finding the light. And I guess that's true, isn't it? Like, in every darkness there is light. Like, with darkness comes light, is I guess what I'm trying to say. What is next? We're taught to think of our physical and psychic wounds as the irregularities in our life, deviations from what should have been, sometimes the sources of stigma. But our stories of loss and separation are also the baseline, right alongside our stories of landing our dream job, falling in love, giving birth to our miraculous children. At the very highest states of awe, joy, wonder, love, meaning, creativity emerge from this bittersweet nature of reality. We experience them not because life is perfect, but because it's not. She goes on to say that the losses shape your psyche. They lay down patterns for all your interactions. It says no matter how much therapeutic work you do, these may be your Achilles heels for life, but it's also the one that can save you. The love you lost, the love you wished for and never had, that love exists eternally. It shifts its shape, but it's always there. The task is to recognize it in its new form. I guess that's just in answer to the question of how are you supposed to feel whole again, and how do you integrate the bitter with the sweet. I think what she's trying to say there is that we can acknowledge and integrate and work on those things that bring us sadness and sorrow, but they are part of us and we can use them and transform them. Yeah, I think that's what she is saying there. The task is to recognize it in its new form. Some beautiful little pieces here. I hope I'm kind of conveying that properly. I think that as I get onto the second half and share with you as I'm reading, I think it'll be easier to share these tidbits, as I said. But another little point that she makes is the best way to heal yourself, heal others. We have to make friends with sadness. We have to hold our losses close and carry them like beloved children. Only when we accept these terrible pains do we realize that the path across is the one that takes us through. The next thing I want to share with you is she talks about us focusing, I guess, on our flaws and how we can change our mindset around that. So instead of saying, I have a lot of flaws and made a lot of mistakes today, we can change that to say, I have a lot of flaws and made a lot of mistakes, and I'm also worthy and we'll try again tomorrow. And that allows us to give that, she calls it the second true place, more airtime. So yes, that first bit might be true because we are human, we do all make mistakes, but we are also all worthy just as we are in this very state that we are in right now. And I think when we lean into that and start to believe that, then that is where we can really start to feel much better about life and to heal our own sadness and transform that. Now I'm flipping right ahead to chapter 6 now, and here she's talking about setting goals and hearing people talk to her about not wanting to get their heart broken or not wanting to fail. And she says, I understand, but you have dead people's goals. Only dead people never get stressed, never get broken hearts, never experience the disappointment that comes with failure. So we are human. We are all going to experience sadness, sorrow. We are all going to suffer in some way, have things happen to us that are horrible, and also have things happen to us that are absolutely, totally wonderful. And it is, yeah, walking that line between those two. Then, oh, this is great. This, I guess, kind of makes me think about journaling. She's talking about writing. In one study, he divided people into two groups. One was asked to write about their difficulties for 20 minutes a day for 3 days. They wrote about sexual abuse, breakups, abandonment by a parent, illness, death. The other group wrote every day things such as what shoes they are wearing, all those, just normal, every mundane things. And he found that the people who wrote about their troubles were markedly calmer and happier than those who described their sneakers, he says. Even months later, they were physically healthy with lower blood pressure and fewer doctor's visits. They had better relationships and more success at work. So yeah, writing, journaling is a great way to get all that crap out of your head and down on paper. And I think it just, gives us that clarity and space for other good stuff to come in and to allow us just to let go of things a bit easier. So that just really reminded me of how impactful I think journaling is. And that brings us to where I'm up to now. And I think I have about 100 pages to go. What I will do is, as I am reading those bits, I will annotate and share with you. So I think, I might be able to share things a bit better that way rather than going back. I mean, there's so much more I could share with you, but I hope that gives you a few little insights to this beautiful book. And I will be back with more thoughts from Bittersweet. So I am up to the section where it's part 3, mortality, impermanence and grief. How should we live knowing that we and everyone we love will die? Sounds sad, doesn't it? So I'll just share a few thoughts from this first little bit. So what she's saying is that the true source of grief, the true reason that we really feel that grief and that sadness is that what once was will never be again. So it's that, that feeling of all those things that once were will never be again. So whether that's the loss of a person and the things you used to do together, or just remembering the things that they did, or it might be just your situations change. Like, there can be so much grief around that. Just that one sentence, what once was will never be again. And then I'll just read this paragraph to you. She says, you can get used to the idea that everything passes. You read the Stoic philosophers who teach us to accept death as inevitable. You can follow their advice to practice memento mori, which is remembering death as a way of appreciating life. You can meditate on impermanence. She says, I do these things regularly. They prepare you to some degree, but the terrible beauty of transience is much greater than we are. In our best moments, especially in the presence of sublime music, art, and nature, we grasp the tragic majesty of it. The rest of the time, we simply have to live it. And I think that is so true. Like, grief is such an individual thing, and it is something that we just always live with. Like, it never goes away. But I love the analogy that we just kind of grow around that grief, and we become, I guess, the next version of ourselves, and we just kind of, that grief, that thing that happened to us, just becomes part of who we are. She then talks about a, I guess, kind of conference type thing called Radfest, which is, I guess, like a festival type thing, a conference that explores the human quest to defy death. So she says the Radfesters believe that beating death will reveal the road to peace and harmony. And I believe the exact opposite, that sorrow, longing, and maybe even mortality itself are a unifying force, a pathway to love, and that our greatest and most difficult task is learning how to walk it. I love that little bit. She does talk like quite a few pages about the Radfesters and, you know, what they believe. And, you know, they do just kind of believe in not just living forever, but living a good life forever. And there is a part in here which she talks about, you know, it's not just about living forever, but living well. So being healthy, being happy, and just, I guess, changing our mindset around aging as well. I think that is a really important thing to remember. Here we go. So she goes, I've always assumed that my 80s could be pretty bleak if I make it there at all. But to hear Bernie tell it, that's just a story we tell ourselves, the wrong story. And I do agree with that. I see so many people kind of go, oh, I'm getting old, you know, and having that mindset of getting old. So while, you know, I don't necessarily think we are going to live forever, I think just having that mindset, that more positive and optimistic mindset around aging, and that we don't have to get old and sit around and do nothing for those last years of our life. So yeah, that is where I'm up to. I'm just about to go into chapter 8, so I will share more soon. Hello. Welcome to the last little bit of the Bittersweet book chat. I've just made some notes from the last few chapters, so I just thought I would share a few of those thoughts with you. So chapter 8 is about grief, and she talks about this saying, or this line really from a poem, but even so. And it just is this phrase that she talks about which helps us to come to terms, I guess, with the duality of grief, where we can still be longing for something or someone. We know that we'll never be the same again, we'll never be whole again, is something that she says. But even so, we can still see the beauty in things, we can still laugh, we can still I guess move forward as opposed to moving on, which I'll get to in a minute. But she also talks about this concept, I guess, of awareness over acceptance. Like we don't have to accept the shitty things in life, I guess basically is what she is saying. But just having awareness about it is actually enough, and just allowing ourselves to feel it and knowing that we don't have to move on or let things go, that we can just live in this state of awareness of life's fragility and pain, but still see the beauty in life. So it's that what I just said before about moving forward rather than moving on. So we can still be in the present, we can forgive, we can love, we can have so much gratitude and feel so much contentment at the same time as being aware of our loss. You know, she's talking about this in terms of grief. So yeah, I thought that was really just, I guess, a lovely way to think about grief. I've made a note here somewhere, but I think it is this thing that I've talked about before. I started a little series about grief, actually. I find grief quite interesting. And it's this thing of like our grief never fully disappears. Like we don't move on, but we can move forward. And I love this concept that I came across after my father passed away, actually. And it's that we have this grief, but we grow around it, and we do become a different person because of it. Like the grief that we have been through, and everybody's is different, just becomes part of who we are. I hope that makes sense. She also talks in this chapter about a study that was done on, I guess, younger people versus older people, and just how they feel about life. And there's this thing where older people develop something that this study called the positivity effect. So generally, that's what this study found, that older people were less stressed, less worried, and tended to focus more on the good, knowing that the bad times will pass and really appreciating the good times. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, the positivity effect. I think that's what she called it. So that was really interesting as well. Chapter 9 I found really interesting as well. She talks about inheriting the pain of our parents or our grandparents. And there's a study, or yeah, I guess many people now have been studying this thing where they're kind of finding that genes can be switched on and off in response to our environment, including adversity. So this one particular study found that distress can affect our bodies at a cellular level. So when we say, I am not the same person I was, we could actually really be meaning that in this, you know, at a cellular level. There was a study done on the children of Holocaust survivors, which kind of delved into that, that pain that their parents or grandparents had been through was actually showing up in the same way as it, like on a cellular level, as it did for their parents. So there is some evidence to, I guess, suggest that we take on the pain or the grief or the things that our parents, grandparents have been through. But that is not to say that we cannot change it, because as this kind of study says, that the genes can be turned on or off in response to our environment. So yeah, that is just a really interesting topic, I think, and she goes into a lot of detail in the book, but it's really, really interesting. And she also goes on to talk about fulfillment. And one thing that I just really love about this is that she says the key to fulfillment is learning to love who you are rather than what you've done. And I just thought that was a beautiful, beautiful reminder that we are enough just as we are in this current form. We don't have to do or achieve anything. We are worthy. We are enough just as we are. And then in the final chapter, which she calls How to Go Home, one thing that she says in this chapter, or she's kind of summing things up, is she says, ask yourself, what are you longing for? Like, what at your core are you longing for? And where is home? So it's just that feeling of, where do you feel at home? Where do you feel at peace? And that little paragraph that she wrote about just reminded me of my probably absolute favorite quote, and that is by Ram Dass, and it's actually one of my quotes for this year, and it is, "We are all just walking each other home." And I think, yeah, if we can find that sense of peace, of contentment, of fulfillment, just in that space of being home, I think that is just a beautiful little sentiment, and yeah, something to perhaps strive for. And then she also talks about, you know, knowing you can move forward without moving on, even if that's not today, even if that's not what you do today, just knowing that you can, that you will be able to move forward, and just living with that duality of bittersweetness in this lifetime. And then I guess finally, which I thought this was a really nice note to end on, she goes, "Turn in the direction of beauty." And to me, that is just being able to notice the small things, being able to practice gratitude, just writing down the small things we're grateful for every day, and just to notice those things, and just to be in the moment, and yeah, just turn in the direction of beauty. I thought that was a very nice note to finish on. I hope all of this made sense. I feel like this particular video was a little bit disjointed, so when I do my next book chat for my next non-fiction book, I'm going to try and make it a little bit more cohesive, and maybe just come in and talk about each chapter at the time I'm reading it, rather than, because I know the first half of this book, like, I don't know if it all kind of made sense, but I hope just sharing these thoughts about this book was helpful, and perhaps, you know, encourage you to actually go and read the book. And yeah, I just really, really thoroughly enjoyed this, and I would highly recommend it. So yeah, that is all for now. I will be back next month with my next non-fiction book, which I think is going to be Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? I think that'll be a nice next non-fiction read. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye.